All right, it is going down. The inaugural WWE Immortal Moment Award. It is the celebration of WrestleMania 13. Many believe the greatest match in WrestleMania history. And Statguy Greg, you are amongst those. It is certainly on my Mount Rushmore. And the guy who sits at the top of my Mount Rushmore joins us right now, Bret Hitman Hart. Bret, welcome back to Cheap Heat.
Oh, nice. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure and an honor. And SGG, I know you're excited because this time it's not a surprise. Bret, last time you came to the radio station, we blindsided Greg, surprising him with your appearance.
My goal this time is to form at least 3 complete sentences. I'm not going to count the one I just said. So the next couple we're gonna start counting.
So Bret, let's start with this moment in particular. Obviously, the match has been appropriately lauded forever for good reason. Did you know heading into this match how good Steve might turn out to be at that point?
I think so. I think, and the reality of it is that even when we fought at Survivor Series that year, or did that fall before WrestleMania 13, I was probably Steve's biggest advocate. Like I was starting to see that Steve, because we had a lot of matches over the summer, including South Africa and places like that, but we had a really good chemistry, and Steve was you could just see the greatness in him in a lot of ways. His work level and his attitude and his ability to sort of envision things. I think I was in a lot of ways his biggest supporter.
What do you think it is about that match that resonates with so many people? Because your style, people say it's more technical, and that match is basically a brawl, and people loved it. It's not, the style of it is not what people would think of as a Bret Hart match, but it is the Bret Hart match.
Well, I think what I remember of it was that we kind of did everything we could think of, literally, in Survivor Series. We sort of had that technical match, that Bret Hart kind of match at Survivor Series, and that was a beautiful match too. Really was a stand-up match. And when I fought Steve, I wasn't expecting to fight Steve at WrestleMania that year. I was fully under my understanding from talking to Vince McMahon that I was going to probably fight Undertaker for the world title, and that got changed. Or I'm sorry, it wasn't going to be Undertaker. It was going to be Shawn Michaels, and it was going to be our rematch. And I was looking forward to that. And then Shawn lost his smile and lost the belt, forfeited the belt, and then Undertaker and I think Psycho Sid were going to fight for the belt. And it was kind of like, so what am I doing now? And it's like, well, we're going to throw you and Steve together again. I didn't expect to wrestle Steve after Survivor Series. I didn't expect to wrestle Steve, and I was looking forward to working with him again. I really did want to work with him again, but I wanted to leave it for a little while, let it. Maybe I figured we would probably face off again, maybe in the SummerSlam, something like that. And so it was all very sort of hastily put together. And when Vince McMahon first talked to me about an I Quit match again, it was like, I always thought the match I had with Bob Backlund at WrestleMania 11 just was a disaster. Like the confines of an I Quit match, take out all the pinfalls. There's no pinfalls, which is part of the drama and the excitement of a match. And say, oh, we're going to throw you and Steve. It's like, you're going to handcuff us at WrestleMania 13 where we got no pinfalls. It was kind of like, I was not happy or that excited about the prospects of the match, to be honest. And I don't know that Steve was either. I think we were both kind of like, a little more handcuffed than normal. And I remember kind of when we showed up that day in Chicago, we kind of both walked out to the ring and kind of looked at the ring, and we're kind of like, what are we going to do? And I think I asked him, I said, I got a sharpshooter, I got a figure four, I got a Boston Crab, maybe a sleeper hold. What else we got? Like full Nelson. Like, it's like you're pretty limited with holds sometimes for what they wanted. And I remember Steve was like, I got this tree stump puller, that painful leg hold that he put on my neck or whatever. That was his contribution as far as holds. I don't think we had very much, and it was kind of like, oi, like, what are we gonna do with this match? Like, and I remember talking to him, and I said, I see it like a street fight. I think I have this vision in my head of like I'm the quarterback on the football team, and then I got the cutest girl in high school kind of thing, and you're this badass guy that's just moved into the school, and everybody's talking about you, and you're kind of the new dog in town, and it's kind of everyone's been waiting for this face off for you and I to square off. And I remember the same situation at my school one time when I was in junior high, and that's where I think the premise came from. And I remember kind of going, I see it as a school fight. And it's funny how we just talked to each other in the ring. We didn't do anything, but we just kind of walked in the ring and said, I see it starting like this. And then we could do this. And the only things that anybody gave us that we were allowed to do, I remember Steve said, well, we're allowed to go fight through the crowd, that we got permission to do that if we want to. And I remember going, okay, well, let's put that in. Let's start with that, because that'll get it off to a good start. Nobody's done that before. No one's brawled through the crowd, which is kind of tricky to do because you're punching each other right in front of the fans. I remember you're pretty up close. There's even fans that are patting us on the back and stuff like that as we're going up the stairs. But wrestling's all about kind of give and take. And Steve and I just had this beautiful balance of him giving to me and me giving back to him. And it's just kind of like a tennis game. Like, we're just keep batting the ball back and forth. And at the same time, just this flow that started to build throughout the match. I think you could almost go right to that brawl through the crowd. Steve threw me into the hockey boards, the penalty box, which doesn't really show very well on the when you watch it back. But I can tell you that was way harder than any turnbuckle I ever took. And there was no padding or anything. It was just a big splat. And I that was, maybe Steve was like, that's very generous of me to do that for him. And it showed maybe to Steve how much I was trying to make him. And then a few seconds later, Steve took a backdrop on the cement stairs, which to me is just as reckless and crazy. And which, again, I would go, thank you for that. Like, thank you for putting your body on the line for me. And that was kind of what we started to do, is just kind of go back and forth and back and forth. And it's a beautiful match. I love when I watch that match. I can tell you that I think there's not one move that's out of place. Everything fits. Where if you said, well, I'm going to take that spot out and we're not going to have it in there, it's not as good a match. Everything is perfect the way it is. Like, you can't take anything out of it. Like, even the bell. Like, I when I watch it back, I love how I walk over to the table when I get the bell and I look at it, and everyone knows exactly what I'm thinking. I'm gonna bust them over the head with a bell, and then I set the bell on the apron, and it's like, no, I don't want a bell. I want a chair. So I go back and get a chair, and then it's like, no, this is not the right chair, and then it's like, this is the right chair, because the one I picked up was padded, but the psychology is there. And I remember telling Steve, I said, they'll forget all about the bell. Like, once we set the bell on the apron, they'll forget all about it, because it's going to be too much going on, too much action, too much back and forth. So they do. They forget about the bell. And that's the beauty of the match, is the bell plays such a big part at the very end. But it's just that storytelling, and I there's so many things in that match that I really liked. I loved the figure four on the post. I believe that was the first time I ever tried it. I had come up with that move, and it was like, okay, I got an idea. It's a hole, but it's not much of a hole. But I think it's different, and let's try it. And I think when we tried it, it just fit right into everything we were doing. And and Steve had that tree stump puller hold that I was telling you about. It was a really painful hold. It was a good hold. I don't know if anyone's ever used it since, but that could be a finishing move for a lot of people if they wanted to revive it. But that was you know, we just showed that we both did our homework.
Do you think, when we talk about the all-time greats, removing you from the conversation, do you think Stone Cold Steve Austin is a reasonable top of the Mount Rushmore, greatest to ever do it kind of superstar in your opinion?
Oh, absolutely. He's on my Mount Rushmore for sure. I think in a lot of ways,
Hogan, Goldberg. So I'm just kidding. Sorry. No, I obviously, who else do you have up there besides Austin? And is Shawn in that conversation, Bret?
I think Shawn is in that conversation. I really do. I think John was a great worker, and a great talent, and he had a lot of issues, personal issues, and things like that. But you can't deny his body of work and just how good a wrestler he was. But Steve, there's certain guys that you wrestle, like my brother Olin, Mr. Perfect, and Steve to stand out, and Undertaker maybe stand out to me as guys that whenever I worked with them, there was an instantaneous chemistry where it wasn't a struggle. Like you could work with each other. I think all those guys that I just named, that you could wait, if you went out drinking and had a hangover and you showed up at the building with an hour's sleep, and you could just go out there and have the best match you ever had with them. Just based on past matches and chemistry and psychology, and guys that just know what works, when to do this, when to do that. When I think of Steve, I think when I first worked with Steve, and I love Steve, but I always thought he was a little bit erratic, and a guy that sometimes just went off script and did something out of the blue that didn't necessarily fit in. Or sometimes, I remember in matches that I had with Steve, this is all before WrestleMania 13, that if we were wrestling, sometimes he would panic a bit. Like, if you messed up a spot or something happened, he would panic just a little bit, and he would kind of go off script and be like, relax, like nobody knows you screwed up except for you. So
Right.
and I think I did a lot in the matches that I had with Steve, like in the first 6 months that I, before WrestleMania 13 and even the Survivor Series. I think I steadied him and calmed him down and kind of got him to focus more on and just not be so he was kind of like, oh, I screwed up, like, it's like, relax, nobody knows, like, it's just me and you are the only two people that know that you forgot to small package me or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I calmed him down. I really do think I helped him a lot. And by the time I think I fought him even at Survivor Series, he was becoming a different worker and a better worker, and a guy that I wouldn't want to say had his confidence back, or had more confidence in his work rate. And I think, and the WrestleMania 13 is a great example of that, where he was becoming the pro that he was walking in the shoes that he was going to walk in for a long time after that. You know, he really started to get it, started to understand me, and I think I was a really good teacher. Like I think I had a lot to do with doing that for Undertaker. Kurt Hennig was a great worker in his own right, and I think we both worked well with each other. But we were kind of both sort of veteran wrestlers when we worked with each other. So Kurt's in the league all by himself, but my brother Owen was a little bit the same too.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
he had a different style than me, and you know, I think once he started working with me on a regular basis, like I think the matches that I had with my brother Owen, for example, after WrestleMania 10, even like 3 months later, 2 months later, were much better matches than I had with my WrestleMania 10. And WrestleMania 10 is an awesome
Classic.
match.
It's great.
Yeah.
But he calmed and steadied himself, and I think I did a lot to kind of I did the same thing for Owen. I kind of, you know, I moved him up to that top level where it's like now he can take that calmness and that confidence level to the next level and the next level and the next level for the guys that he works with down the road.
Yeah, sort of reminds me, SUG, of when Jey Uso talked to us about finding that top guy speed.
Top guy speed. Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna throw back to.
But go ahead, SUG.
So, you know, in a recent interview with Ariel Helwani, friend of the show, you mentioned Roman Reigns and you singled him out as somebody who was I think you said he was a throwback to your generation in terms of like credibility and work rate. And so, you know, I was curious, what aspects of Roman Reigns' style, his in-ring style, do you see reflected in your generation, and why was he one of the guys that jumps right to the top of your mind when you talk about that?
Well, when I watch a lot of the younger guys or the guys that have come up, you know, I see that sort of erratic kind of panic sometimes where they rush into stuff but when I see Roman Reigns wrestle, he's always in control. He's always very calm. He's always kind of already got it figured out what the next sequence of moves are going to be and how he's going to do them and how he's going to execute them. And he just never seems to panic. And I can tell sometimes as being sort of an expert that I sense sometimes people panic, especially a lot of the younger guys. They panic all the time and rush into their moves instead of taking their time and letting the moment build. And I've seen that in Roman for quite some time now, where he just seems like if I was wrestling Roman and I sort of envision it in my head, he'd have that same kind of working pace that I like, you know, like where you're not panicking, where you're running over and picking me up really fast to go into and do it again, like really fast, instead of just taking your time walking over. Like you don't need to rush so much. I think a lot of wrestlers today, the next generation or you know, they rush all the time, and it's like there's no need to rush. You know, it's easier to let the story unfold at a nice pace than speeding through it, because I think you lose a little bit.
We're coming up to the Hall of Fame where we'll celebrate this great match. And I'm hosting the red carpet show, Bret. I'm going to make sure to grab you while we're all dressed up, have a nice little conversation there on the red carpet. Coming back to WWE at this point, you've only been back once recently, but I'm curious how it feels coming back in this iteration without Vince. And I'm curious, the story of you and Vince McMahon is such a long, complicated relationship. How do you feel that things ultimately sort of landed in the Bret Hart Vince McMahon relationship?
You know, I've never really thought about it much. I feel, I'll be honest, I feel like I have a little more respect now. I think people are kind of going, you know, maybe Bret Hart was right all along. You know, like, you know, I've always been kind of banished and a little bit punished for it's like, oh, well, what do you expect? He punched out the boss, you know. I knocked him out cold in the dressing room. Like, so it's always kind of like, always been kind of a black spot, and maybe still is too. That, you know, you can't really get away with, you know, I can't see Wayne Gretzky doing that to the guy that's the, you know, head of the
Gary
NHL.
Bettman to Gary Bettman. Yeah, I don't know.
Might be a good idea, but at the same time, but I, you know, I just kind of always felt that I was less appreciated and maybe untrusted, like where you couldn't, I wasn't utilized as much as I maybe could have been or should have been. But I, in my own heart of hearts, like I would never change anything that I did. I did the right thing that day, and you know, so I feel like there's been a bit of an upswing or a certain sort of an appreciation more for my work rate and how hard I worked and what I contributed to the business. That where it's like, you know, I appreciate being honored, you know, for a third time and being the first guy to be honored that way. And I'm really proud, always was really proud of this WrestleMania 13 match. It was always my favorite match I ever had, and I've watched it back as much as maybe anyone else, and it's always brings a smile on my face. I've had Steve call me like 10, 12 years ago, call me and say, I'm on my treadmill and I'm watching our match back, and what a match. And, you know, I know he's always been really proud of it. And, you know, it was just one of those matches. I don't think if you had to do it again, that it would come off as perfect as it did that day. Like it was just the way it blended together, and his style, my style, and the brawling and the holds and the psychology and the blood and the, you know, I just, whenever I watch it, I go, most importantly, I can go, there's no animals harmed in the making of this movie. Like it was, I don't know about Steve, you know, taking a backdrop on the cement, or, you know, hitting the railing head first, and, you know, the things that we did in that match to each other. But I know for me, and I know I took those, that, like I said, the hockey boards, which was a really, you know, really hurt a lot at the time. But I came back to the dressing room, and, you know, I like 10, 15 minutes after the match, I felt pretty good. Like, it's like, geez, that was the easiest match I've had in a long time. You know, in contrast to the Iron Man match, for example, or even Undertaker at SummerSlam a few months later or whatever. You know, when you finish the match, you know, you crawl to the shower. Like if you watch that Wrestling in the Shadows documentary, you know, I can barely undo the laces on my boots. I'm in so much pain from all the blunt force trauma or whatever. You know, it's all a lot of heavy blows, guys. On someone like Undertaker choke slamming you or power bombing you, and all these moves that they do to you. You know, they all add up, and they, you know, I remember when I came back from the match with Steve, even in contrast to the Survivor Series match, which was only a few months earlier, I felt pretty good. It's like, geez, I feel really good. And I think I probably can say the same for Steve, that he, you know, we both, it wasn't as painful a match as it was two guys that really worked well together and worked. That's what I remember most, is that it was just a beautiful song. Like it really just, every little,
It really was.
you wouldn't want to take out any, you know, you don't want to take out the flute at the end. Like you want to, you know, leave everything just the way it is, because it was perfectly done, perfectly executed, and
Excellently executed, I would say.
most importantly, nobody got hurt, you know, badly.
Listen, after Mania, Bret, when things slow down and you're not on a media tour, I'll text you, and I would love for us to have like a longer form time to really, because they got you doing media today, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I would love to, if there's time, to just have an extended time to go through some other matches with you. You know how we feel about you, and thank you so much, and congrats on this weekend.
Yes, thank you, Bret. Congratulations.
You guys can call me anytime.
And real quick before we go,
That's a dangerous thing to say to me. I don't.
Yeah, don't say that to Bret. To Greg. I just want Maya. I want Maya to be able to see the greatest professional wrestler who ever lived on an interview. Bret, I sent you the picture of the shirt that I was wearing the day she was born.
Yes, she's looking good.
She's looking good. No, this is a future women's champion. I'm convinced right now.
You got to send it to the dungeon with Natty.
Yeah, I might have to she might have to go work with Natty and Tyson. Bret, I'll see you in Las Vegas. Congrats again.
All right, thanks very much. Thanks for your time, guys.